But like every time I visited the family, I would write down kind of my reflections from it and then see what direction I want it to go into, and that's kind of how my...
He's my great-grandson. I raised his daddy. When his daddy left my house, he was 28 years old. And when his son got 3 weeks old, he was brought to me at 2 o'clock in the morning by social service.
Just his general attitude, he was mean. But if you'd been slapped in the mouth or slapped down to the floor for no reason, you're going to hold some anger.
Hopefully be able to represent this family in a way that can produce something positive, that can help everyone.
And anytime it's kind of like, you know, what is wrong with your child? You know, so it may have been that what you thought was the mother's just not disciplining her correctly, you know, or my child would never do that.
You know, the research about social emotional development is relatively new, but it's powerful.
How do the experiences of childhood shape one's life?
Wait, I'm taking the movie.
You're taking the movie?
Yep.
You gonna ask me a question?
I want to tell a story about raising well-adjusted children and the things that can interfere with that. We all want to raise healthy children. We want to raise kids that are smart, that are able to thrive and contribute to society. But many children face hardships that get in the way of healthy development.
You know, even if there was very traumatic things happening in the family, no one talked about them. They just kind of buried them and forced people to act normal. But it amazes me how much the human spirit is able to overcome if put in the right condition.
The field of child mental health. I think, honestly, the field of child mental health is in its infancy. But there is definitely a problem of awareness within the larger society about children's mental health.
How do we focus our attention on an issue that has long been neglected? This project began in a small community. A community trying to address mental health problems in very young children. To reach these children and others like them, we need to have a better understanding of the challenges they face.
A couple months ago.
I want to do this
You're doing good. I like all your shapes.
Well, probably early on I tried to change the way I parented her. I tried to be more firm, and it's kind of the feedback you get that she's misbehaving because I'm not strict enough or I'm not stern enough.
I think it's hard for our person and for our community and for a nation to think that our young, really, you know, our 6 and under population could be dealing with mental illness and what that means. That our little people are really struggling.
Therapies that address psychological struggles of very young children are only beginning to be offered in communities around the country, and many people don't know anything about them.
Until we came along, there really hasn't been much in the way of treatment services for children birth through 5. It is an area of study that we thought wasn't important. Not only it wasn't important, it simply wasn't on the radar of people.
Well, I think awareness is a big piece within our community. I mean, I think we're still dealing with the understanding of early childhood social emotional needs, and so there's that barrier of some people just don't believe that there is our little ones can have these kind of problems.
The triggers for needing mental health treatment are, it's really at a very basic level, it is that child's functioning. How well is that child functioning compared to their peers?
There is a national effort to expose the American public to issues around children's social emotional development.
So this organization, whose primary job is to provide therapy and treatment services to young children with mental health concerns, wanted to expand awareness about the issues they were working with every day.
To paint your door green.
Issues they felt impacted society in a big way. They thought that introducing some of these families through art might offer a more compassionate and personalized view of these challenges. So they brought together families, artists, therapists, and social workers to work toward the goal of using art for social change.
We want to expand and create awareness of this issue. Because before I just said these few words to you, how many of you thought about social, emotional, or mental health issues for kids birth to 5, that was an important issue? So you guys are part of a cutting-edge project.
In order to create public awareness and public interest in this topic, the Alamance Alliance has created a special arts project called Behind the Scene, Portraits of a Contemporary Family. This arts project matches 16 artists with 4 families.
Well, for you too, at noon today you'll meet those families. And so on a personal level, with these families, we want to honor the families, and that's part of what I think we're doing with you. We want to normalize what's been going on with these families with their children. And I think your work with them will really help honor them and help build their own self-esteem.
One suggestion, we're going to be working with people. Let's forget about what they have. Again, I mean, we are artists. What we're most interested in is basically make them become individuals in our society.
I was asked to document this project. We chose to focus on 4 of the artists, one with each family.
Oh. So if you tried to go to the cage, it would jump around and like.
I'm really excited about it. I think I'm excited to see the artwork and see what different artists perceive and how they express it.
Initially I was like, oh man, this is going to require a lot of me, because I felt like I was walking through something that maybe whatever I experience with whoever I meet will force me to face some things that, you know, from my own tragedies that I hadn't seen yet. Like I didn't know. I was kind of nervous.
I wanted to show, I guess, the way our family isn't so far off from everybody else's family, but we still have some struggles that maybe not everybody faces, and I wanted that to come through in the artwork and just open people's minds and hearts about it.
When I found out about the project, I was curious as to see what, you know, like what it would look like as far as mental health in children, because there's so many stigmas in our society on mental health. I have a family, solid family, but at the same time, wherever I am, we tend to develop family and in that context.
And so this kind of pushes boundaries a little, connects with community, it connects with the community in a different way, and it's less stigma when it's art. I feel like it gives people the ability to kind of look at it from a different perspective and less about, oh, this family's dysfunctional or whatever.
One of the intentions of this art project was to portray these families with dignity. Often families with these challenges have endured something really traumatic in their lives. Violence, incarceration, abuse. It can be hard to see beyond those things.
From the first meeting when we had a mental health professional come in and we got handouts to explain the types of things that traumatize this age group, yeah, it's a good thing to learn about and realize.
Well, actually, believe it or not, I was watching a commercial, and it was about mental illness, and how pressure would be not to have the help.
Did y'all turn the TV down?
She's a very lovable child. She loves everybody. That's what scares me. I don't want him, you know, to get close to some people in the world is not very cool.
You're right there, there's on that tank out there. I can light and
But, you know, like I said, I've got 3 girls and 2 boys. And this one right here has been through more than my other kids have as far as mental anguish.
He was kidnapped when he was a baby. His mama kidnapped him, and I've just been so paranoid since then.
How old was he when that happened?
He was like 3 years old. And, I mean, I panicked, I freaked, I don't know, I put out flyers, I spent $6,300 to get him back. We actually found him, well, law enforcement actually found him, and his mother had had several related charges of child abuse and child neglect. So her way of life right now is not very good. She's doing things that, you know, a mother's not supposed to do, but I can't change her reality. That little boy can tell me everything. He can tell me from eating 1 cheeseburger a day, not knowing where they were going to stay, sleeping on the floor in an abandoned mobile home with, you know, no power. Her just taking him in the middle of the night while I'm out here busting my tail, working to make sure that we had something. And what kind of effect it had on me. I didn't know he was safe, didn't know where he was.
He's ruffian, the father's ruffian, but he's affectionate and protective. So I think that I want to convey that to the society through the photography. The father is, in my eyes, loving, affectionate, but determined that his son will thrive. And I think that's the important thing. But there's been a lot of turmoil. The mother's absent. The mother's behavior has been anti-family in many respects, from what I understand.
Well, trauma can be anything that overwhelms a child's ability to cope. So anything that's sort of, you know, we kind of think of things that are sudden, unexpected, and negative. And out of the child's control. So for younger children, because they have fewer coping skills, there's more things that could constitute a trauma. But generally what we find is we're talking mostly about a category of trauma called complex trauma, which is where the parent or primary caregiver is actually in some way responsible for the trauma. So something like child abuse, you know, physical abuse, sexual abuse, those types of things.
When he had went through this abuse stage for the 19 months, this girl, my grandson's girlfriend, was supposedly be keeping him, and she abused him so bad. So I started searching and looking to find some help for him, and that's how I met Shadrika Brown. Right there at that church.
We knew each other just in passing, and actually me and Miss Emma go to the same church. So I guess it's a little bit of a background in the history there to a certain point. And for over 2 years now we've been meeting, been like just perfect.
Having an informal support person while navigating the mental health system can bring comfort and relief to families. It helps connect them to the services they need.
With the family partners, we're the bridge between the professionals and the families. We're not trying to put a label on your child, because we can't label a child, we can't give a child a diagnosis, we can't make or break a family, but we can help keep that family bond there.
I park as close to the church as I can. Don't tell me I'm lazy. Don't tell me I'm lazy.
But with her being the great-grandmother, and then you've got this young child that you're not used to, and suddenly starting to have problems, that's hard to deal with. It was very much a generational gap, and it is can be overwhelming.
Yes, I'm bringing him up like I brought my children's up. This is the way you got to live under this roof right here. He gonna have to obey and go by my rules.
And then trying to navigate the system can be difficult. To have that support, to have someone to talk to, just having someone to sit there and letting her talk, her frustrations or things that are going on with her, and then making sure that she is connected to the agency and making sure that things are running smoothly.
There's a lot of things she didn't know what to ask, how to do all of that stuff, and she had to learn. And I was like, well, have you ever thought about this? And she said, well, what is that? Because they didn't have it. So, I mean, she went through raising her children to her grandchildren. Now she has her great-grandchild. She didn't know any of that stuff.
Come on now. Why are you walking behind me? He just woke up. You got a letter from your daddy today.
Who?
You?
And what did he say?
Oh, well, I'll read it to you. I know you'll get tired trying to read that whole thing.
I wasn't sure how serious the mental health issues were going to be and what age the kids were going to be. I wasn't really sure. So I wasn't, that's why I was kind of wondering, what am I getting into here? When we had the first meeting, I guess a lot of the mental health issues that are everywhere, but people don't really maybe even think of as mental health issues. You know, it's they're all around us, probably in our own families, and we just are not always aware of it.
When I got hooked up with Giorgio's family, you know, I didn't know where his father was. At the beginning, I had no idea. I was thinking, why is his grandma raising him? But in my head, my mind said, he's probably incarcerated. But then I said to myself, don't say that, don't say that. I asked, you know, where is his dad? Found out he's incarcerated.
It's just so much work around this house.
It's sad that from my experiences, that's what I thought. And that's where I don't think people really realize just how bad things are. The mother was never in the picture and had issues with drugs. So I knew many grandparents raising grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And it was much too many.
And she just shoots for everybody. She said she had shot for Michael Jackson and Aretha Franklin and...
Did you just say Michael Jackson?
She said she...
For me, it felt like, oh, I'm going into a situation with a family that is like many situations I've been in before. And so I just thought I'll be getting to know some people and hopefully be able to represent this family in a way that can produce something positive.
And you're going to get up and look at them?
I've discovered through knowing the family more that Giorgio has been through a lot of trauma. A lot. Something no child should ever have to go through. And so a lot of the issues seem to stem from that. I think I want to make a quilt for Giorgio because if he has a quilt or something that can like close around him, something he can hold on to and physically touch.
And see all the stitching that's sort of holding it together and making it come together. As, you know, here's a family trying to hold it together through all kinds of stuff.
I'm really just growing myself in this aspect of photography, and it's a learning experience for me too. These children are not physically impaired in some way, so that it's hard to detect that they are emotionally or behaviorally challenged. It's the environment, the home environment, is disturbed. And I think that has an impact on the child and on Kelvin it's hard to keep up. He's a single parent, and it takes a lot of time to clean up after yourself. This seems to be an old concrete or pad, maybe for a building, where he can ride his scooter, but it's not very big. And he's got the heavy traffic. This is the shadow of Christian. It's on the back seat of the car. I didn't know this is what I was taking. I turned the camera backwards and pressed the button a few times. When I got home and was looking at the pictures, I said, well, he is a shadow in the sense, not that he's not present, but that the shadow depicts his interior life, and we see the effects on the outside.
No one goes in there. No one. Only me.
Well, you let your grandbabies get in there and destroy it.
Well, the blur is Christian's head, and the target is his father's stomach. It just happened. I didn't have the camera set for a speed photo, which is why it's blurry. But I think it demonstrates this behavior comes out of nowhere, and you can't anticipate it necessarily. I don't know what prompted Christian to do it. And everything seemed okay, and then all of a sudden this little explosion of activity came about.
Most times children, young children in particular, children in the first 5 years, will go unnoticed for having problems unless they're having dramatic behavioral problems.
And she was going to daycare, and the daycare workers had approached me, I guess before I had realized it was a problem, and said, you know, she's not outgrowing biting and hitting and things like that where her peers are. You know, they're learning to talk and share, and Sarah's not.
If their peers have friendships and they don't, if their peers are able to follow along with the teacher, answer questions, do their work, and that child is not, that's a flag.
Carmen gets irrational fears, and she cries and screams, and it's loud and it's annoying. And
if you're working with a child that has difficulties expressing themselves, when they start acting out, and when the times that Gerazio didn't want to express himself, we'll always tell him that we couldn't understand him unless he talked to us. And screaming and the tantrums wasn't going to help him, and we wasn't going to understand what he needed if he didn't tell us what he needed.
Can you hear me?
Some children will lose their ability to regulate their emotions, and so they have temper tantrums that are extremely severe, or they're very aggressive. But we also know that there's a lot to do with what's going on inside their brains in terms of the way their brain is getting wired, and that they are not as able to calm themselves as other children.
You let me have a turn.
No, me. Me.
Christian.
We see sort of these spikes
okay?
in the way that they express themselves emotionally.
I think the way people are thinking about the brain is that connections are made by repeated experience. Very much as a child's walking to her best friend's house, and she walks there every day, and so a path gets formed between her house and her best friend's house. The more she walks, the more that path is clear and obvious and sort of set. Well, if a child's brain has a repeated experience with disappointment, or a repeated experience with fear when an adult walks into the room, and that happens over and over again, the path gets formed in the brain, so the neurologic connections are made and are stronger and stronger. And if that happens early on in life, as a child gets older, that path is still present. The child's brain's go-to mode is, oh, there's an adult coming into the room, that's a threat, so I'm going to respond by defense, you know, by lashing out or by withdrawing. And it may then be much harder to form new paths that are healthier and you know, now more appropriate.
When you see a child in daycare that has a mental illness, you are seeing the behaviors. You are not seeing the illness. You can't see the illness. You only see the behaviors. If you have a child in a wheelchair, you see that there's something wrong and people are willing to, oh, let me open this door for you. If you've got a child that's really having a bad day and they're off the charts, people will not say, here, let me help you. Let me open this door for you.
Just getting in trouble all the time, and they were very concerned. And the worse it got there, the worse she felt about herself, and the worse the behaviors got.
I want to be able to do something that can impact this issue, something that can raise some more awareness about it, and you know, mental illness, trauma. I really just feel like this quilt should have a piece of everyone in it that's involved in this project.
Come in! Hey darling, how you doing?
I would like it to be, you know, the clothing of his father, because in where I come from New Zealand, and in New Zealand the Māori people have something called mana, and mana is, it's almost like the spirit that an object holds. Taraggio's father's clothing has his father's spirit within it.
She's gonna make a blanket out of these
Yeah. I asked if she got letters from her grandson, and she told me all the time, and because I have an idea. I wanted to put his father's words into the quilt so that he can read it as he grows up and learn from his father. Even though his father has made some mistakes, his father can still move forward from those mistakes and progress. I'm putting his words onto it by screen printing his words onto the fabric. It's very clear.
Every time he started talking about it, he started crying. So he really misses Daddy. He misses his daddy. And I just pray and trust in the good Lord that when he come home, that he will have a new set of friends and just leave the thugs alone. This is my prayer to God every day. It has really been rough.
And the fact that you're going to sew it.
Yes.
I've never seen it, Roger, and it's like putting you're being put into it, his words to his son are being put into it, and as a complete whole it comes together, and it's almost like we are putting so many things together, and all of the mana that the quilt will carry is really special.
And she ain't got to do nothing but put the prints on it. I will put it together. I got my padding, I got the lining, I got everything to go in it. So it's going to be together.
You've made quilts before?
Lord, how many have I made?
Number one, it's for them. Number one, it's for the family, and number one, it's for the boy to have and grow up with. But also, I guess alongside of that, you know, the community is going to benefit and learn. This, you know, this exhibition is about families and trauma, and I know people always say, oh, children, they just bounce back from everything, you know. No, I don't know if they do, because when they grow up and you see things that some kids do, a lot of it has to do with stuff they went through, and it never got dealt with.
The mystery of how our early experiences shape our lives was not studied until recently, and the results have been startling. One study conducted by Kaiser Permanente, called the ACE study, an acronym for Adverse Childhood Experiences, revealed a profound correlation between early adversity and poor outcomes later in life. It showed that circumstances like alcoholism in the home or child abuse led to high outcomes of depression and suicide, and higher rates of serious illness later in life. Even if the person didn't have self-destructive behaviors like drinking or smoking, they were still far more likely to get cancer and heart disease if they had faced trauma early on. Scientists believe that this is due to the physiological effects of childhood trauma.
These things create an environment that keep children from maximizing their early brain development. And this is interesting because 85% of brain development happens in the first 3 years of life. And that's higher level brain development. But when children during that time are having these adverse experiences, they're spending lots of their brain development time just working on basic survival skills.
Carmen showed a lot of problematic behaviors after we got evicted from the apartment with her dad, so that she had these random fears. With Colin, it came around age 3. He just wasn't learning to speak. I mean, he talked, but he didn't know how to express his feelings.
And so while there, I jotted down Carmen is artistic, colorful, she remembers everything. Her mom said that she's very concrete and she's not cuddly. Like, Colin will hug and kiss you all the time. And, but he said that he had anger management and he lashes out. And I think one thing that the first day I was able to see his anger, kind of the rage, and I was like, I feel like he just needs a way to channel it. Like, and he likes music. I'm like, maybe he just needs to channel that, like, into music or to things that he loves, because he's very disconnected. It's so funny. Like, he knows what he's doing when he gets mad, because I asked him, I said, why don't you try this, like, when you get mad? He's like, nope, it doesn't work, nothing works. And I'm like, you haven't tried it, how do you know? So he knows what he's doing, and I think he just needs a method of channeling it instead of, like, you know, bottling it all up. And so, and then I think they were still going through a healing process, because Dad was soon out of the picture, like a year before.
What we're talking about are children whose lives are just kind of complicated and whose families have a lot of challenges, social or economic or health challenges, so that it's hard for them to respond to the particular needs of that individual child, given that individual child's temperament. And so things can go off course, and the family can start perceiving of the child as difficult. The child can start perceiving the world as unsatisfying and scary. And behaving in ways that make sense for the child, being defensive or being anxious or being withdrawn.
We told community services about the situation here, and they called the family shelter, which is for abuse victims and stuff, and they said my case qualified. Okay. So, you know, one of the things that they talk about that, you know, a lot of people don't think about is if you're dependent on somebody and then that person kind of leaves you, that's kind of a rough situation too. That's abusive because, you know, you've been dependent on it. Some people got into housing and stuff. We went there, and we were there for 6 weeks.
Like, that's what I'm just kind of just trying to put myself in that mindset, because you're not only trying to be a mom, but you're human. Like, you're not just a mom. Yeah. And you have to cope and respond in a healthy way for yourself, and then for your children, and then for those outskirts around you.
Yeah, and see, I have PTSD from childhood abuse from my stepfather.
I really want to represent the family as a whole. And then I started writing down, this is my breakdown, looking at the family structure, and being able to express the beauty and the stresses in color. And then I wrote down some questions just when I started to meet them, like every 2 weeks or every week. And so I wanted to have the piece weaved to this middle piece that was less structured, like just chaos, not fully matted down, where everything was kind of up in the air right now. And so I started with asking them to draw their family in color, and I really want to use this piece to show their work with mine and kind of our dialogue of this family. And so I have, like, this is some of Carmen's drawings, and she is such a Miss Perfectionist. Like, she's like, no, it looks bad, throw it away. No, you can't have that one, it looks bad. I'm like, girl, it's okay. She's so hard on herself. And so this is what Colin was doing. And I love it because you see such a different, that's his dad right here. And I think it shows like a really good example of the differences of their personalities. Like, it's really real to who they are, and Colin's really, he's not out there, but he's just free. And the crab? Yep. And then the mom. Mom, where's mom? Mom, a lot of mom's pieces got taken over by Colin. So you see the pink where she started to draw something, and then Son comes in and does what Son is going to do and colors all over it. And so it just shows this, it actually speaks a lot about the dynamics of the family and the relationships in the family.
And being an adopted daughter, that was really concerning to her, that maybe there was something there that she was missing. And the horror stories that you read in the papers, you know, are not good, and she was really worried about it. Was heading down that way. So we offered support and catch things early and go to therapy. And
at the beach, and he hears me doing karate. I want to be a scientist.
Yeah, I mean, the trauma of adoption alone with being separated from her birth mother, then being separated from her foster mother, and then she has had within the last couple of years of a situation that kind of added on to some trauma-related experiences, and so all of that combined, she's addressing that in therapy. She has issues of, you know, not feeling safe, not feeling loved, not feeling lovable, fear of abandonment, fear of separation. All those kinds of issues are very real for her. I haven't been a perfect parent, but I tried really hard to help her, and she's tried really hard, and it's just the card we're dealt.
So, got to see her grow up in pictures for the first 6 months. These are pictures of her and her foster mother and foster father.
You know, can happen to anybody, you know, if it's a biological child, adopted child, a foster child, or, you know, anybody from any kind of background, any kind of life experiences, that it's not about not loving your child. You know, if my love for Sarah could cure her, it would have cured her years ago. But
I'm a social worker by training, but I work with adults, so although I've worked with kids a long time ago, it was this whole stuff, it's kind of like brand new to me again, and when you're dealing with it as a parent, it's so different than dealing with it as a professional. A lot harder than I thought it would be.
At times it's been exhausting and overwhelming and difficult, because for a very long time didn't really understand what was going on, just knew that she was in a lot of pain and needed a lot of help, but really wasn't sure what was wrong with her. And you don't know what's wrong, you really don't know how to help. And so I think for a couple of years it was, you know, just felt like all we did was go to appointments and get tests done and see different therapists and doctors, just trying to figure out what exactly was going wrong.
We'd like to stay out of the blaming game relative to parents. I think almost all parents are doing the best they can do under the circumstances. I think almost all parents want the best possible for their children.
The doors of reality actually opened there, and I never knew that there was so many different people out here willing to help, to sit down and listen and talk. That would, you know, do you need anything? You know, is there anything we can get for you? What can we do for you? And it's not that, you know, what she did or what I did. It was what we can do for you to help you. If you had known him before the Alliance got involved, you wouldn't want to stay around him. He was meaner than anything you'd ever probably want to meet. And that was definitely a problem.
Right, well, I mean, he just seems very controlled and, you know, under control.
There are a number of ways that children can be identified as potentially having social emotional concerns. Sometimes a parent or teacher notices a cause for concern. Other times, when abuse or another form of trauma is discovered, the Department of Social Services or the court system refer the child to a mental health professional.
Did they give a diagnosis?
Carmen's was an anxiety thing, and his was a behavioral management type thing. I forget what they call it, but it's like there's one really prevalent behavior diagnosis that they give for younger kids because they really don't know how to diagnose them with anything else.
So it'd be nice not to have to do a diagnosis, but because that's the way we can keep clinicians engaged with families, because they won't provide the services without getting paid, we have to provide a diagnosis. Those diagnoses are primarily, and again, I'll say primarily, are adjustment disorders. And they also could be things related to hyperactivity, or some of the right now are conduct disorders for children with aggressive behaviors. Most of our children have had trauma in their lives.
As far as a diagnosis of what he had, the only diagnosis that I can come up with, he was scared to death of adults. He wasn't able to speak his mind. But if I do speak my mind, somebody's going to haul off and slap me.
I think the challenges that the families that we're beginning to work with is them not wanting their child labeled. Labeling is a very strong no-no to a lot of families. They don't want that label in that file when that child goes to school. They don't want their child to be judged because they have a diagnosis.
So that's a really great question. What does a diagnosis mean? And it's interesting because it means a lot less than people think it does. Essentially, what a diagnosis means is that a child is exhibiting, or any person, you know, whatever the situation, the person is exhibiting a particular set of symptoms at this time for this particular period of time. That's all it means.
Once a child is diagnosed, they are referred to therapies that have been specifically designed for young children with these problems.
And so what we really should be seeing within the context of therapy for children is that the parent should really be involved just as much, and sometimes more, sometimes less, than the actual child themselves. Because we see that parent as a coach for that child throughout their day and throughout their week to help that child better understand their cognitions, their beliefs, and their feelings. and how all those things impact that child's behaviors.
Now, do they, while the therapists are doing things with them, is this also a therapy session for you?
With Sherry, it is. I'm in there with them. Carmen's had therapy where she was along with the therapist, and then they would talk with me afterwards or before. They would talk to me before and tell me what they wanted to work on, and you know, so I can continue what they're doing at home, you know, and it's not just a gap.
When the child comes in, often we'll say something like, you know, I'm a person who talks to young kids about the scary things that have happened to them. And your mom and I have been talking about the fact that you had something really scary happen to you when you were, you know, whatever, sexually abused, when you saw mommy and daddy fighting, whatever the really scary thing was, we'll actually name it right at the beginning. And you know, we'll say, you know, and I know that because of that, you've been having a lot of scary nightmares. Mommy says it's been really hard for you to sleep at night. So we're actually naming those things right away.
We took her in and got her a therapist just for dealing with anxiety, and you know, she still gets anxious about some things, like she was worried about my feet being swollen, you know, she worries about my headaches and stuff, you know, yeah, and you know, I'll tell her that's not really her responsibility, but I want to do it, Mommy, you know. And so it's just kind of a difficult thing for her because, you know, my mom's always telling her, you know, let grown-ups take care of grown-up things, you know, but then she knows there's times when I can't, you know, take care of everything.
You know, we all go through these moments of good times where everything's okay, and then we all go through these moments of struggle, and you know, maybe it's anger for one kid, and maybe for me, I'm frustrated with my pain and I don't know what to do and I feel helpless, but we're all, and they can go at different levels, but we're all walking through these kind of mental and emotional struggles. This is when I actually got Mom by herself one day, because I wanted to ask her what would her family look like without an interruption. I really want to use this kind of throughout the piece, where there's Mom in the middle and she's kind of covering her two children, and then there's life radiating out of that. And I mean, that's her all over. That's what her will is as a mom. I feel like with women there's such a determination to thrive and to survive and to overcome whatever they're given. And so I really wanted to capture that in the piece, and so that's why I made this dual face. And she's actually crying. I don't know if you can tell. There's a teardrop coming down. I'm gonna put a little more darkness so it'll pop, because there is that bittersweetness. And moms will cry when they're happy. They will cry when they're sad. You know, they will fight tooth and nail for their kids, whether their kid is being a well-behaved, perfect child or not. And it just hit me, you know, we can have these stigmas.
I have to hand it to Calvin. He works nights. He's there for his son in the morning. He comes home, he fixes him breakfast, he gets him to school. He picks him up every day, and they have a good relationship. The intensity of Calvin's eyes, he's half smiling, but he's very serious about it. And he's got his arm here around Christian, very protective, but very firm that Christian is everything to him and he's always Christian. And I think that comes through the photograph.
All of them in this program, they come in with their own perspectives and a way to help you. They sit down, they talk to each other, they know what your situation is, and all of them try to do their best to help you understand. The Alliance has opened up his mind to a whole lot of different factors of life. Is that I can finally be a little boy. I don't have to be the scared person where I can't speak my mind. But if I do speak my mind, somebody's going to haul off and slap me.
Now we know also that children are resilient, so that's the exciting thing about what we do, is that if we can identify these children early, we think that we can provide interventions that will help the family, the primary caretakers, develop secure attachment and help those children develop abilities to emotionally regulate their own emotions and therefore their own behavior.
Anything they could do to make him feel like he's a better person in society, and he doesn't have the sudden outbursts he used to have.
But it's symbolic of what he did or what he does. And I think through the counseling to show him that that's not appropriate behavior, that takes a lot of time, a lot of people with skill.
Often, caregivers may not really be the source of a problem, but they can often be the answer to the problem. And it's that dynamic between that child and that parent that can truly change the issues for the child.
You know, there are a number of models that are being tested and developed, models like parent-child psychotherapy, like a model called Circle of Security, another model called Attachment and Biobehavioral Catch-up. And a lot of data is coming out showing how useful and how effective and practical these strategies are. There's another model called PCIT, Parent-Child Interaction Therapy.
You know, we've done family therapy, she's done individual therapy, she's done play therapy, medication therapy, therapeutic writing. She had been writing the year before and went to a summer camp for kids and actually got kicked out. They just said they couldn't manage her, so found this place and had heard that they did some really good work with kids that had, you know, had some challenges, so she applied and came here for the summer program. We've done some attachment therapy, and I think the therapy that worked best for us was early on. We did parent-child interaction therapy, which kind of combined a lot of those different therapies, but that was very helpful. There are some evidence-based practices that have shown better results with kids with certain types of problems, and one was the parent-child interaction therapy that we did. Well, we would go in once a week together to a therapist, and we would be, I would be trained on how to interact with Sarah, and I would be videotaped and recorded while playing with Sarah, and they would give me feedback. There was a mic in my ear and kind of help us through some challenging behaviors, and I found it very helpful.
So it really helps the parents develop, you know, limit setting, positive interactions with their children, setting good models, those kind of behaviors for children who are acting out a lot.
There's some research that's been done looking at different aspects of the brain that shows that certain aspects of the brain, such as the cerebellum, are incredibly sensitive to the environment. And when we change the environment and when we make improvements, doing what's necessary to help the family so that the family is functioning better. And when we do that, children's behavior changes fairly dramatically. And in fact, we have some research that was done by Alicia Lieberman and Patricia Van Horn in San Francisco that shows that when children are provided with a year of trauma treatment called child-parent psychotherapy, which focuses on the attachment relationship between the parent and the child, that they actually increase their IQ scores by over 10 points. So we can have huge changes in how the brain is wired by changing the environment through the interactions with the primary caregivers.